The Theory of Demographic Change and Response by Kingsley Davis. Kingsley Davis was a sociologist and demographer who developed the theory of demographic change and response. His ideas were developed to help us understand how populations grow, change, and adapt over time. The core idea of Davis's theory is that populations go through specific phases as they respond to changes, especially those related to birth rates, death rates, and social and economic pressures. Demographic change refers to shifts in population dynamics, like increases or decreases in birth rates or death rates. Response refers to how society adapts or reacts to those changes. This theory helps us understand how societies evolve in response to shifts in their population. By observing these patterns, we get a clearer picture of how countries develop and why populations look so different in various parts of the world. Kingsley Davis's theory is closely tied to the concept of demographic transition, which describes the shift from high birth and death rates to lower birth and death rates in a society. But Davis added to this idea by focusing on how societies respond to these changes, meaning he looked at what people and governments do when they see that their population is growing or shrinking too fast. He thought that the choices made by individuals, communities, and governments were influenced by how they perceived their population situation. If people believe their society is overpopulated, they may decide to have fewer children, use family planning, or migrate to other areas. Similarly, when populations drop, people may have more children to help support the family, or governments may even encourage births by providing financial support to families with more kids. Davis's theory highlights that societies are not just passive recipients of demographic changes, they actively adapt to and shape those changes. For example, he observed that people tend to move to urban areas when rural areas cannot support a growing population. This movement is a response to demographic change. As the population grows, people naturally look for areas where they can find work, better living conditions, and other resources. Urban migration is one common response to rapid population growth. In essence, Davis emphasized that demographic changes create social pressures, and society's responses to these pressures lead to further changes in population. For instance, in a country with high birth rates, there may not be enough jobs, housing, or resources to support everyone. In response, people might start having fewer children, or they might move to other countries in search of better opportunities. Governments might step in by investing in family planning programs to reduce birth rates or by creating policies that encourage people to move to less crowded areas. All of these responses, in turn, affect the population dynamics further. One significant part of Davis's theory is the idea that people respond to population pressures in stages. He observed that as societies move through different stages of demographic change, their responses tend to follow predictable patterns. For example, in early stages of demographic change, where birth rates and death rates are both high, people do not feel much pressure to change their behavior. However, as the population starts growing rapidly, typically due to declining death rates, people start to feel pressure to respond to overcrowding, job shortages, or resource scarcity. At this point, they may reduce family size, move to cities, or seek other ways to relieve the pressure. Over time, if birth rates drop and population growth slows, the pressure eases and society stabilizes. At this stage, people may even feel comfortable enough to have larger families again, knowing that their society is stable and can support them. Davis saw this pattern of pressure and response as a natural cycle that many societies go through, helping to explain why birth and death rates fluctuate over time. One classic example of demographic change and response can be seen in developing countries. These countries often start with high birth rates and high death rates, keeping their population growth slow. But as healthcare and living conditions improve, the death rate drops while the birth rate remains high, causing a population boom. When the population grows quickly, society starts to feel the strain of limited resources, leading to responses like family planning programs or the migration of young people to cities or even other countries. This response helps ease the population pressure, leading to a more stable society. Another example can be seen in developed countries where birth rates are often very low, leading to an aging population. In response, some countries have implemented policies to encourage families to have more children, offering financial incentives, childcare support, or longer parental leave. Other countries have turned to immigration to help fill gaps in the workforce and support the economy. These actions are all responses to demographic changes, showing how societies adapt based on their specific needs. A key takeaway from Davis's theory is that demographic change is not a one-way street. Societies are constantly adjusting and responding to population pressures, and this adaptation affects everyone. For instance, when more people move to urban areas, there is a need for more schools, hospitals, and public services in cities. This urban migration can also create new job opportunities and drive economic growth in these areas. However, it can also lead to overcrowding and strain on public services, creating new challenges. Davis's theory reminds us that demographic change is a complex, ongoing process that requires flexibility and adaptation. Every society faces different pressures based on its unique situation, and the way it responds to these pressures shapes its future. For instance, in countries with rapidly aging populations, the government might prioritize healthcare services for the elderly and create policies to support older workers. In contrast, countries with young, rapidly growing populations may focus more on education, job creation, and affordable housing. The theory of demographic change and response is essential for understanding the challenges and opportunities that come with population changes. Davis's ideas show us that population growth is not simply a matter of numbers, it is about how people live, work, and adapt to the world around them. Every action people take in response to population pressures, whether having fewer children, migrating, or supporting government policies, has ripple effects on society. As a result, societies evolve in response to these demographic changes, shaping everything from economic policies to family structures. Today, Davis's theory is relevant as we face new demographic challenges. In many parts of the world, aging populations are creating strains on healthcare and pensions, while other areas struggle with youth unemployment and resource scarcity. The theory of demographic change and response helps us understand that these problems are not isolated. They are part of a larger cycle of adaptation. By studying how societies have responded to demographic change in the past, we can better prepare for the challenges of the future. So, as you can see, Kingsley Davis's theory helps explain why populations grow, change, and adapt over time, showing us the role that individuals, communities, and governments play in shaping our societies. His insights provide valuable lessons for understanding the social forces that drive change, reminding us that demographic pressures will always exist, but it is our responses to those pressures that ultimately define the world we live in. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Kingsley Davis's theory and want more content like this, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps us bring more insightful content to you, and we appreciate your support. Thank you for watching.